Hi everyone, here's the Book Chemist once again, and today I'm reviewing Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert, which I reread last week, more than 10 years after reading it for the first time. And now, don't get me wrong, I liked the novel a lot the first time around, but this time I absolutely adored it on a sentence-by-sentence level. In fact, I loved it so much that it made me reconsider my life choices. At one point I regretted choosing to study American literature, contemporary American literature in particular. And now I just wish I'd studied French instead and specialized on the naturalists. When I started rereading the novel, I thought that I actually didn't remember its plot very well. All that I could remember were a few very strong scenes from across the book. But it turned out actually that I did remember most of it fairly well. The point being here that these scenes are the only moments of drama and adventure in a life, Emma Bovary's, which is otherwise plagued by a constant sense of boredom, unfulfilled potential and flightiness. The book is just marvelous in how well it captures this feeling of ennui, and I realize that I'm making it sound awful. A book about boredom sounds like the worst, and yet Madame Bovary is the very opposite. Every description of a slow day in the French countryside, every reflection on Emma's growing sense of lost opportunity, they're all conveyed with immense elegance, and they're all breathtaking in their succinct beauty. The way in which Flaubert conveys the passing of time in Emma's life is central to what I think is the greatest achievement of Madame Bovary as a novel. The way it manages to represent and balance out that strange dichotomy between beauty and despair that is central to so much of everyday life. Definitely the everyday life, the quotidian life of a fairly wealthy provincial village, a place of luxury and immense boredom, with its exaggerated characters and its petty village politics. It feels like the book is constantly torn between descriptions of the lovely French countryside and descriptions of the growing sense of malaise in Emma's airless life. This sense of beauty, especially the beauty of the natural world, is something you find a lot, I've noticed, in naturalist fiction. Thomas Hardy's love of the Wessex countryside shines through most of his novels, and I know that Thomas Hardy is not a naturalist, but he kind of reads like one, so cut me some slack here. If I think of Giovanni Verga's I Malavoglia, which, if you ask me, is one of the best Italian novels of all times, even there you find a great sense of pride in the hard work that the family at the heart of the book does, in the way it connects them with nature, it connects them with the terrible forces of the sea, and with such a basic function as feeding themselves and feeding other people through fishing. I feel like it is this deep awareness of the beauty of the world that makes the squandered lives that you read about in all these stories feel so much more tragic, but also so much more real. Madame Bovary is also always clear-eyed, absolutely clear-eyed, when it comes to exposing the various constructs that we place over real life in so-called civilized society. I'm talking here about festivals and rituals and social mores. One of the most effective and strong scenes in a book that contains so many truly strong scenes is the country festival scene, where Flaubert's style switches effortlessly from a beautiful, simple, elegant type of prose to a juxtaposition of dialogues that feels very experimental to me. In this scene, Rodolphe and Madame Bovary are sitting by themselves in a room while overlooking the public celebrations that are going on in the town square just downstairs. And Rodolphe is stepping up his seduction game and trying to woo Madame Bovary, while at the same time outside the window these lowly government employees are giving these speeches that are full of empty rhetorics and propaganda. And at one point Rodolphe's sleazy tactics almost start to get fused with the words of the government employees, until suddenly these two different dialogues are collapsed on the same page, and suddenly you're reading elaborate love declarations based on the affinity of souls, juxtaposed to speeches about manure, about animal husbandry, about giving a prize to whatever farmer achieved the highest yield with their crops. It's impossible when these two speeches are collapsed not to see the base, animalistic and self-interest nature behind all of this theater. For all of this empty rhetoric, what both of these conversations, both Rodolphe's conversations with Emma and the celebrations outside, what they're all concerned with is just sex, hunger and lust, all of it motivated by greed. In fact, the entire novel is marked by a ruthless degree of honesty, by a willingness to hide or deform nothing, but present human life and consciousness, words and all. And so you get to experience the empty rhetoric and the cowardice and the base pride of Homais, the pharmacist in this village, or the stupidity and laziness of Charles, or the selfishness that animates every romantic thought, every single romantic thought harbored by, be it Emma or Rodolphe or Leon actually. All of these things shine with an almost painfully blinding light, and I'm not surprised that Flaubert really struggled with the pettiness of his subject. And I can only imagine that working for years on a novel of this type must have been a truly tiring, even depressing endeavor at times. This degree of honesty, however, is not cruelty, far from it. I think that's very important to stress, because knowing all of the flaws and all of the worst sides of these characters doesn't turn them into villains. In fact, it turns them into human beings, because human beings, all of them, including us, or at least me, are horrible every once in a while. Some of the characters are more despicable than others, and some of them behave criminally, there's no way around it. But for instance, it's impossible not to feel pity and sympathy for Charles, so badly mismatched to his wife. Even more, I would argue, although please let me know if you disagree with this, I think it's impossible not to sympathize with Emma, truly one of the great characters in literature, and a character of incomparable psychological depth. A woman who is at once a great fool and a woman of great wit. Someone who is at times the victim of her passions, but can also be the architect of her own life. Someone who can play the role of the hapless lover, but can also be a domineering woman of the world. She is truly and very much a bourgeois Faust. Madame Bovary is a novel of incredible modernity. It feels ahead of its time today, and the fact that it came out in 1856 just defies belief. I will be reading more of the French naturalists very soon. That's a world that always fascinated me, and yet somehow I made it to 31 without ever having read Zola, without ever having read the Goncourt brothers. I'll be reading my first Zola novel, Germinal, very soon, and I look forward to exploring this world more, and I look forward to exploring more of Flaubert too. The only other Flaubert fiction I've ever read was the Three Tales. What do you think of Madame Bovary? Do you agree with me that it is one of the great books? Do you disagree? How do you feel about Emma's character? I can see how some readers would despise her from early on. And by all means, she is at times a horrible person. That's not under discussion, but aren't we all at the end of the day? Who's to say? I feel like I touched on fairly big questions today, fairly big matters, and yeah, I really look forward to discussing this one. Let me know what you thought in the comments below as always. Thank you so much to my patrons for supporting the YouTube channel, that's truly awesome, and bye everybody.